Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic is a dietary supplement, not a drug. Therefore, it is useful to affect the structure and/or function of your body in various ways, but it is not intended to and will not cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent any disease. Individual testimonials may not be everyone's experience and do not constitute scientific evidence. Jurak Corporation does not make any drug or treatment claims for its product.
Atomic Man it is. Hello, everyone. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, what a week it has been since the last call. I started thinking about what I was saying and what all the little pieces and parts of the story of my father. And I started to think, this is going to go on for years. There is so much to tell you. Every single thing I told you last week, there's a sub-story and a subplot and another sub-story to every single thing. And look, for example, I told you last week that he left Europe a month after he got married. They came to Canada on their honeymoon, and he had a job offer. He had a job offer to look at how to grow things out Western Canada. And what happened when he landed was that they landed in Halifax on a boat. It was called the Melita. Oh, by the way, we wrote a lot of this history, and we had it on our original website many years ago, and we are in the throes of rewriting it. It will be put back up on the website with all the pictures that we refer to here, some of which we have posted in our emails to you announcing the call, like the picture of the car that he started, that he wanted to manufacture, the picture of the original house where he was living, where we were living when I was growing up, and when he moved to his new house where he made his first laboratory and all that sort of thing. A lot of that was covered, and so when I talk about things, don't worry, we're going to send you all the backup as we move along, and eventually it's all going up onto the website so you can share it with anybody and everybody. And you know what? This is something that you should share with anybody and everybody, because everybody's sick. Anybody you talk to today, when you say, hey, how are you? Oh, golly, I didn't sleep well. My stomach bothers, my this, my that. They're taking this drug, that drug. Somebody just told me in a call that I had this past week, one of 30 different calls I had with people asking how the tonic works, could it help them? And they told me that they were prescribed some kind of a medication, and then the doctor said, but you have to come back for a checkup within, I don't know, a month or 2 months or something. Well, he said, what for? Well, he said, I have to check to see if it's affecting your liver. Holy mother. So one thing that you know, and those of you listening to the call that have been drinking the tonic anywhere from today back to 75 years ago, I know there are some on the call that have been drinking my dad's preparation for 30, 40 years. There are others that may not be on the call that we'll get them on the call to tell their story, that were drinking it from at least the early 80s. And there are other people like me who has been drinking it for 67 years, about, or something like that. So there are an awful lot of people who are drinking this on a very, very regular basis every single day, because they know that it will keep them out of the hospital. And I told someone this week, I told a few people, as a matter of fact, I just boosted my own dose anywhere from 1 to 4 ounces a day, depending on what I do. Today, as I do this call, I must have had about 3 ounces just in the last 2 hours. Why do I do that? Almost instantaneously, it gives me a boost of energy. It gives me a focus. It clears my brain. It gets me concentrating better on what I have to do in front of me, whether it's this call or whether it's writing a piece or adding something to the website and having all my marbles lined up. It does that for me every single time. So it still affects me like that, and I know it affects an awful lot of people like that. And what my dad did when he was a boy in Europe, before he even thought about getting married, he was in school. I had mentioned that he was deaf from about the age of 14 until he developed hearing in the bones in the back of his neck. So he buried himself into his books. One of the things I mentioned, I think, that he had tried some experiments on hogs. And there was a farmer somewhere not too far from their own lands where he knew that he used to go there, and he knew the farmer had these two really huge pigs. And one day he's there visiting because he used to like to go into nature and so on, and study whatever plants he could and pick up samples and so on. These two hogs were lying on the ground, and the farmer told them that they're dying. Well, my father had just started putting together his product, and let me just remind you, when he started to think about developing this preparation, the reason he did it is because he had been mountain climbing, he had a shortage of breath, he thought he was going to fall. If he fell, he'd pull all his pals down, and he thought, maybe I could find something to alleviate this situation. Well, he immediately thought that it has to do with the blood. Why do you have a shortage of wind? Maybe a lack of oxygen. Maybe the blood isn't manufacturing enough. These things went through his mind, so he started off right away by working to see how he could keep the blood in good shape and the walls of the arteries and the veins clean. And of course, he was just going by his knowledge, what he had read, what he had learned, and what he could glean from whatever was known in the world at that time about these sort of things. But he thought, when he saw those two hogs, let me try some of my preparation, because he had advanced quite a bit in his ideas, at least from the blood cleaning perspective. And so he asked the farmer if he could feed it some of his preparation, and the farmer said, yeah, why not? What does it matter? They're dying. Well, my dad said there's a proviso. He said, if the one that you say, if they're dying, one of them is going to die, and the other one, if it doesn't die, I'd like to have a piece of the artery when you take it to market. And apparently, the way he told me the story, the farmer laughed himself silly because he said, take it to market? Yeah, right. Well, make a long story short, sure enough, that hog all of a sudden starts rousing himself, all of a sudden starts getting up, and not too long thereafter, the farmer has it in such good shape he can sell it at market. And so indeed, my dad got a piece of the artery, but he asked him also for a piece of the artery of the one that died. And sure as he thought, the one that died, the artery was like an old water pipe. It was caked inside with all kinds of stuff, lessening the passage of the blood. That is what did the hog in. The blood could not pump properly. On the other hand, the piece of artery of the one they brought to market was clean as a whistle, nice and pink and healthy. And that's when my dad knew he was on the right track, because his first idea was, if I can do something to get the blood working properly or better or working again the way it used to, then I'm on the right track and miracles can happen. And sure enough, that's exactly what it is. And today, folks, that is what we tell everybody. This works first and foremost to the purification, the detoxification, and the oxygenation of the blood. And I tell you, in America for sure, and in many other countries probably, even in Canada coming up strong, and other countries where people's diets are suffering and they're eating more and more of this plastic junk food, this sort of thing gets worse and worse, and the blood supply gets clogged up, it gets dirty, it gets full of grease and garbage, and then that, what they call plaque, starts growing on the inside, attaching itself to the inside of the artery. And you have all kinds of heart problems in this country. If they had clean blood, they would have never had it. You can take that one to the bank. These folks that get stents put in and there's blockages and so on, they called it arteriosclerosis in the time of my dad, maybe even today, I'm not sure. And that's the buildup of the plaque in the artery so that the artery cannot deliver the required amount of blood in the required amount of time. And so the heart suffers, and the body in general suffer, and all kinds of organs suffer because they're not getting proper quantities of blood delivered at the right time, and so on. And if you were able to go and take a live blood analysis, just look up on the internet, live blood analysis. They take a drop of blood, they put it on under an electronic microscope, and they will show the picture of your blood on a TV monitor, and you can see the blood is still alive, and you see everything moving around. Some blood, and I did this, and when I did it, there were 25 other people before me, so everybody was watching everybody's blood on the monitor. Some of the blood hardly moved. Some was like, it was dead already. And what the person said, the technician, was pointing out in everybody's blood, this is a bacteria, this is the cholesterol, this is fat, this is grease. And what the white blood cell does in your blood all day long, it goes after a red blood cell and it envelops it. It's about probably twice or maybe 3 times the size of a red blood cell. So it grabs it and it sort of washes it, and then it lets it go, and it goes and gets another one. And that process it does all day long, cleaning your red blood cells. Well, I saw some cases where there were 6 or 7 red blood cells all like in a clump full of junk and fat, and the white cell would come along and try and envelop it. Of course it couldn't, and it tried 2 or 3 times, and then it just went on its way and went to another one. That kind of blood, folks, let me tell you, is going to have a person in a hospital because the body can't get done what it's supposed to do. And that's the very, very first thing that my dad figured out, and it's the last thing that I will tell you whenever I talk to you. It's the blood, folks. It's in the blood. Remember, the blood has to deliver the hormones. So if the hormones are pumped into the blood and the blood is full of junk like that, it's like a sewer system. Where do the hormones go? How do they get delivered? They don't. They just don't. And the oxygen, now the blood is oxygen poor, so you don't have enough oxygen going to the brain or other parts of the body that require oxygen, and on and on and on. So that is the key, and that is what my dad figured out right back there when he was about 18 years of age. So in 1922, when he sort of put this thing together for the first time to make it to make it work, this is what he was working on. I don't think he really realized just how far-reaching the effects of doing that was actually going to end up being, because he had not figured out every aspect of these tonic herbs at that time. I mean, he was working. This was a work in progress, and he worked on those herbs over the years, putting them together, eliminating the ones that he didn't think would work. And then when he finally got them together, 18 of them, how much of this one should I put in? How much of that one? Okay, so this one will help this organ. This one will help this system. So if I put these, I mean, holy cow, the permutations and calculations, there was no computers. I mean, he was doing this with a pencil and a pad of paper. So these kind of things took him forever, and he just kept on and on and on. And because of his deafness and the life he was leading, he really dug into books. He became a voracious reader. And I remember growing up in Canada when I was a youngster. I mean, he had a library there. I mean, I think he read every single book. I mean, holy cow, he always had a book. And he worked hard and he worked long hours and he was away a lot. But whenever he had some private time, it would be with a book. And my mom was looking after us. He'd pick up a book and read a few pages or a couple of chapters. And he read everything and anything. And I mean, the library was full of all kinds of books. So he was a voracious reader, and he was picking up knowledge like that that you can be sure of every nature you could think of, including maybe some hints of what he should be doing with his preparation, because how on earth was he able to put all this together? When I met this Dr. Mowry, let me jump fast forward to 1997. Someone said did you read a book called Herbal Tonic Therapies? I said, no. So I got the book and I read it, and here it's talking about tonic herbs, and it covers 60 of them. And some of the ones that are in our preparation are in there. So I read those first and foremost, and I started looking and seeing what exactly a tonic herb was, because up until then, I did not know. And I did not know why my dad's preparation was working the way it was. I knew it was working on the blood, but I didn't know the intricacies. So I really thought, wow, if this is so, and this fellow read the book, how can I get to talk to him? Well, I started writing a letter to the publisher, and after a page, I threw it in the waste. I said, there's no way, he'll never get the letter. Where do I find him? How do I get his phone number? Who knows him? I wonder who. And I knew this lady that I knew who was a master herbalist, so I called her and I said, did you ever hear of Dr. Mowry? She said, Dan Mowry? I said, I guess so, Daniel. She said, yes. She said, as a matter of fact, I worked with him when I was studying herbalism. And she said, why, do you want to talk to him? I said, I sure would, can I? So she said, I see what I can do. 3 days later, I'm on the phone with this man. And he's humoring me because I'm telling him that I have a tonic herb whole body preparation. And he said, no, you don't. I said, well, I do. I think I do. I said, it was my dad, and I told him the story, how he developed it and so on. He said, it's impossible. He said, no one knows about that sort of thing in this country. Now, that was 1997. And still, people did not have much of a knowledge of tonic herbs and what they are and how they work. And his book, when he wrote it, he thought that he's going to have to be the person to develop a whole-body herbal tonic formula to save America, as he put it. So when I told him, can I share some of it with you? And he wrote me a letter about 2 months later, and he could not believe that, as he said, I couldn't really come to grips with the fact that here was a man in North America who understood this tonic herb concept so long ago, talking about my dad, because I told him he started commercializing it in 1943, for Pete's sakes, and he started thinking about it in 1922. So he was flabbergasted. And he wrote on our website, and it's still there, 10 points of what a whole body tonic should do. And he says on each point, this is exactly what JC Tonic does. Every single one is exactly what he had written. And he wrote those in his book when he wrote it, I think, in 1993 or thereabouts. So my dad really was on the right track. When he decided to move from Europe and come to Canada, that was a big move. I mean, in his mind, it was going to be into a new country and to live there. In my mother's mind, I think she thought it was more a honeymoon, and they'd go and have a look around and go back to Europe. Whereas she said later it was civilized. Well, it didn't last too long before it became pretty uncivilized, because by 1933, things started rumbling in Europe and just got worse and worse, and you all know the rest of that story. So my folks came in 1926, and they went out west. And on the website, the story, there was a part where we wrote about how he and my mother, they boarded a train to go out somewhere between Regina and Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, Canada. And they had no food, no water. I mean, the train stopped periodically to let the passengers out to go and avoid their bladder. And that was it. But when they landed, finally they were let out at a place. It was called Davidson, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And my dad had said it was just like one little house thing. It was a train station, really nothing. And they were left on the platform, and the train took off. And all of a sudden, up turns this fellow in a 1914 Model T Ford, and he introduces himself as, I think, Francis Tigler, if I recall. Anyway, he was Hungarian. Well, my father, fortunately, had learned at least 4 languages fluently and a smattering of a couple of others, because he grew up from 1904 to 1914, before the First World War. That was the golden era of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. I mean, anybody who went to school learned 4 languages at least. And as my dad used to tell people when he lived in Quebec City, when there was a bit of a scuffle between the French and the English, he used to say, I don't know what you people are squabbling about. He said, heck, in Austria, on the money, there was 4 languages, for Pete's sakes, you know? So it's all, isn't it all relative, isn't it? But in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, there were so many languages, and there were 4 official languages. So he did learn, and he was able to speak with this fellow, who also had a smattering of English, but being Hungarian and so on. So he was the person who had been set up to pick them up and bring them to where they were going to live and where he was going to set up shop and start working. And what he did was he commandeered. He was able to commandeer certain things because he had the position and the authority and the budget to do it. He got 4 cabooses, and he had them fitted to be like bunkhouses for the workers that he was starting to engage to help him in his projects. And of course, this was really in the middle of nowhere. My mother was beside herself. I mean, she came from a really civilized part of the world, and there were houses and roads. Here, there was nothing. And so after a year, she said, you know, this is it, Carl. I want to go back home. This is, I don't see this as any kind of a life. And he reluctantly gave in, but he was able to get transferred to Winnipeg. And he told my mother, well, he said, I have to be transferred to Winnipeg before we can, get to the east and get back on a boat. And so they sort of settled in Winnipeg. That was in 1927. That was a year later. And it was a little bit more civilized, but it was probably just like a town out of a spaghetti western. It really was a western town. And I think Hog Town or something they called it, because a lot of cattle and hogs and stuff came through there for slaughtering and so on. But my dad set up and started his project again. And, well, look, my sister Loretta was born there in 1927, so that changed things a little. But after another couple of years, my mother said, Carl, this is ridiculous. I can't stand it. I want to go home. So he finally gave up, and he said, okay, we'll go. And they ended up going to Quebec City to wait for their boat. That was in 1932. And she just fell in love with the city. Well, I can understand. I mean, there were some houses there that had been built 200 years before. There was a town. I mean, there were real buildings, there were real people, so she fell in love with it. It reminded her so much of Europe, and so they stayed. And there, my brother Norman was born in 1935, and then I in 1937. And so here we were, Canadians, and sticking with it, and my dad who went about his work. But here comes the war. So when the war happened, he was drafted into the war effort, not as a soldier, but to do scientific research. And I'm not sure exactly to what extent Canada contributed, but I know that Canada and Canadian scientists and the laboratories worked hand in hand with the Americans on a lot of incredible projects, one of which was how do we concentrate the food. So because they were shipping so much food to Europe and so many of the boats were being torpedoed, they had to figure out how to do it. So, of course, they jumped on what had been already developed many years ago, this idea of dehydration. But how do you dehydrate vast quantities, and how do you dehydrate so when the people over there open it and the soldiers open it, it's not rotten and it's still nutritious and so on. So that was a project that he worked on. And so as that starts to develop, he got a house way out in the boonies on the other end of Quebec in a place called Sainte Foy. And there's going to be a picture. There is a picture that was on that story of that house as well. And it was way off the road, maybe 200-300 feet off the road, with this big winding driveway that the snow used to blow over, and they would blow over and the banks, and it would completely cut us off from the world. Well, my dad used to travel out of town 3-4 days a week, and he was the only guy, it seemed, in the city that had new tires all the time. And as a hobby, he started raising pigeons and rabbits. He had Angora rabbits and pigeons, the kind you eat. He had beehives galore. My mother had this huge garden about 200 feet long and about 200 feet wide. I mean, every flower you could think of was there. And she had them planted so that as one flower lives for its 2 or 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever it is, dies, others always take their place. So there were flowers in that garden forever. And we ate pigeon. We had barbecued pigeon, better than the barbecued chicken of today. And we ate rabbit and rabbit stew and barbecued rabbit. And people used to come and pick up the fur because they were Angora rabbits. And I lived through all this, and he had the beehives, and he's doing his work at the same time, and he's traveling the same time, and he can't say a word about what he's doing. He can't tell anybody. He can't tell the family. He can't tell his friends. So, of course, he has a very thick Germanic accent, and the word and the story started going out that he must be a German spy. He's probably sending messages with his pigeons to Germany. And of course, he couldn't say a word. He couldn't say no. No, say, hey, we're eating the pigeons. But we grew up in this sort of very mysterious kind of life. But here it was in that house. I think I was 4 years old when we moved there. And I remember it as if it was yesterday. I mean, I could tell you every little pebble in the road. I could tell you where my room was. I could tell you about, we used to walk down that driveway and catch this jitney to take us to school. And all this time, my dad is finagling and developing his formula until 1943 when he decides to make it commercial. And all those years, he had people trying it. And all those years, he just improved it as he put piece by piece together. Now, he told the story that he finally got the real mechanism, the molecular chain of what he was trying to do in a dream. He actually said, I bolted out up in bed, and he said it was like written there in front of me. And he said, I grabbed my pencil and paper, which he always had next to his bedside. And as I got into business, I always had a dictaphone next to my bedside, and paper and a pen. But anyway, he started jotting down what he saw, and he rushed to see if what he wrote was going to make any sense. And as he said, sure enough, that was the key. I finally got it, because over the years, it was improving, was getting better. It was doing this, now it was doing that. Now he would always make little batches, try it with people, and they would say, yeah, I feel this, no, this, and that. And he was trying to get that whole body thing so that every single system is included, so that when a body starts getting this, everything is going to be looked after. And folks, those of you who have experienced it know. Those of you who have not, you can always go to the website. There is a part there under Success Story Database. Most people do not know it is live. You click on it, and you'll come to an alphabetical order listing of probably 200 different health challenges that people have told us they either have a lot less of, have none of, and in many cases their doctors taking them off medication. And many, many cases of people that call us on the phone to tell us what transpired, they tell us the same thing. As a matter of fact, we have one of those people who has actually had tremendous results, and he's on the line now. And Rich, would you come on and tell the folks your story? Because folks, you have to hear, this is the kind of stuff that goes on. Okay?
Yeah. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, good. I'm glad you made it. Thank you very much. Yeah, please tell the folks. You've been how long? You've been drinking for a long time.
Well, yeah, I started drinking in 2012, and one of the things I have learned is the power of the tonic. I know, for instance, you were talking about that hog earlier. One of the people that started taking the tonic that I started on had her mother live with her and her family, and the mother had chickens. And the daughter was telling us that whenever the chickens would start to die, they would get lethargic. And she said the mother started giving them the tonic. And then within a few days, they would start flapping their wings as they came back. I said, well, how did she give them the tonic? She said, well, he used to force feed them with the dropper.
Yeah.
So, well, it worked.
And that's right, because they have blood in them.
Yeah. And the daughter did beautifully with it. She, in fact, she was on the call some time back. It's been a while back, but I have seen so many great results with the tonic. Not only with myself, who I started, like I say, in 2012, but before that, I had gone to the doctor for my yearly physical and had gotten a result of diabetes. Following year, my charts were clean, and from then on, they have been. For the first couple of years, after I started taking the tonic, I went ahead and got a flu shot. We had a very serious flu outbreak, put a lot of people in the hospital. After a couple of years, I thought, well, I haven't caught a cold. I feel good all the time, so I stopped getting my flu shots. So I haven't had any problems. I have not, as you mentioned, seen the inside of a hospital for 5 years for anything, actually.
And how old are you, Rich?
Yeah, I'm 73.
You're 73?
Yeah. So it's the age when the immune system tends to weaken, and people do catch these a lot easier. But I have my mother on the tonic, and she's 94, and she likewise has not had the flu or a cold,
and doesn't have to visit the hospital.
Hasn't seen the inside of a hospital. She hasn't caught any kind of. She brags about, hey, I'm 94 years old, and I haven't caught a cold in 4 or 5 years now. So it works real well. But the results are so great on the tonic, and it's so much more in the sense that you mentioned. It's a body tonic. It helps the whole body, from the mind to the body. It helps with, I know I have a fellow that was taking it. He had an anxiety disorder, and he was taking Paxil for that anxiety. But he was also taking a juice. It was something that, it was that he thought would help him overall. And it was one of those blends that they put you on to help you with. He would take the juice in the morning, and then a half hour later, and he would take his Paxil with the juice. And then a half hour later, he would take the tonic. After about 3 months, he ran out of juice, and he stopped taking the juice. But unbeknownst to him, he was also not taking the Paxil. About a week later, he said he had one kind of rough night where he had some flashes that he just, that's part of the Paxil. But within the next few days, he realized he had not taken his medication for about 8 days. From then on, he just didn't take it anymore. Not only did the tonic help him, but it also did a lot better than the Paxil was doing. He's able to do so much more, and he feels so much better. So some of those herbs are the kind of herbs that help calm the system, and I don't know what they do in the mind, but they are very helpful for people with certain disorders like that.
And there's none of this incredibly damaging side effects that just about every medication has, and people don't realize it. And the doctors mean well. We got this great drug; it'll do it. But no one really measures that long-term effect, how damaging it is to your liver and kidneys and God knows what. So, gee, that's great. I just, I'd love to hear that story and your story. And I didn't realize you're 73. I thought you're still just a youngster. But you are. You feel like a youngster.
Yeah, I think the tonic helps with that, too. It helps you to feel good,
Yeah.
to feel, like you mentioned earlier, you feel a lot better, you think better, you sleep better. So it's got so many effects, top to bottom.
Well,
the power of the tonic.
Rich, the message that we hope everybody gets from you is to do it so that you don't have the hospital problem as you grow older, because no matter who we are, we're all growing older. Our bodies are all deteriorating. It's just whose is going to deteriorate faster than the next person. And me, if I can prolong it for another 25, 30 years, I think everybody should be happier doing that.
Yeah, and to me too, and it's quality of life. You can live to 100 years old, but if you're miserable all those years, or say the last 30, it's not worth living. But now if you can feel well living into your 70s and 80s, and that's what the tonic does. It helps, as you mentioned, the whole body tonic. It helps you with so many things, and sometimes it's surprising, some of the things that it may help you with that you didn't expect. For me, it helped me with so many different problems I had that had been creeping up on me, but had learned to live with.
That's the key. You learn to live with it. A lot of people have learned to live with their problems. They're not life-threatening. They can still walk. However, they're there. These problems bother people in their abilities, in their work, in their concentration, and so on. But they learn to live with it. Isn't that sad? We have to learn to live with them.
Yes, you have to. And the drugs that you mentioned to help these problems, sometimes the help is minimal. Even if it's a lot of help, you got these different side effects, and you never know what you're going to get. What kind of a side? They give you a list of side effects, that are so long, you never know which one of them might affect you.
And they're scary too. Yeah,
they're very scary. Yeah. So if you can make it through the side effects, you might get some help. But the tonic, as you mentioned, doesn't have any side effects. You end up with it helps you in so many areas. It makes you feel better. You sleep better, and it comes with no side effects. This is something that can help everyone, and it's helped everyone that I've put on it.
That's right. Rich, I appreciate it very much that you came on in a nice, cool, collective manner. It covered all those points. Those points touch so many lives. You don't have to have a life-threatening problem. You just have to, live better. You mentioned quality of life improves immeasurably, and when that happens alone, even if you don't have all the wealth or all the everything in the world, you have a much, much better life, and you feel better and are happier.
That's the key.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Bye for now. Folks, of course, we have tons of these success stories, some that go back 10, 20, 30 years. But as the story unfolded with my father, and he had this experience with the pigs, that's what got him to know that he was on the right track. And it is what even Rich is saying and what everyone says. It goes right to the blood. Listen to what he said about the chickens. It's because they have blood. This will work on anything if it has blood in it. If you don't have any blood in your veins, it doesn't work. So my dad figured this out, and he said this is going to be the key to keep people alive or to get them well again. And so during all his experiences and his war effort work and his family and everything else, he decided he's going to start this big time. Well, big time. For him, it was big time. I mean, this was 1943, right in the middle of his work, right in the middle of the war, right in the middle of so many things. But he decided to move us from that home we had way out there, which if I lived there today, I'd be happy as a duck. It was such an incredible house. Matter of fact, it was made into a historic monument, and they have some art gallery or something there now. But he wanted to move us closer to schools because we were taking this, they called it a jitney. It was the so-called school bus. I remember that. I mean, I was 5 years old, and there were mushrooms growing on the inside of the roof. It was so dilapidated and musty. But it got us there, and we went to school, and then he decided to bring us closer. So he moved to a place called Sillery, and he built a house there in 1943. I think it was about 43. And it wasn't very long after that that beautiful playroom that Norman and I thought was ours forever became the laboratory, and he started putting in these tanks and making his preparation there. And he had it pumped over to where there was two garages. One he made into a clean area for filling, and the other one for labeling and packaging and so on. And all of a sudden, these cars and trucks were coming to our house, loading up. I mean, holy cow, there were people coming from the U.S. who were loading up. They heard about it, word of mouth. It was always word of mouth, folks. And we did show one picture of him sitting in one of our emails, sitting at a meeting with distributors, people who are actually starting to make a business getting this remarkable preparation to people's hands. And so he was doing that, what we're doing today, and he was doing it without internet and without email and just by word of mouth once again. And as Rich just told us, look what we just heard, word of mouth, because he talked to somebody who everybody tends to disbelieve when they first hear about it, because we are so brainwashed the way medicine is practiced that we think it's impossible. And most of the times, with most dietary supplements, it is impossible. And that's because these are all unidirectional. They're only organ-specific. They work on one particular part of the body. But my dad figured out, he said, look, this body is one piece. It's all interconnected. Everything is dependent on the other thing. I mean, the liver can't function without the kidney and the stomachs and so on. And so everything has to be in pretty good shape, or in darn good shape, so that everything works in harmony. And he used to tell people, he said, you know, those hormonal glands starting from the pituitary in your brain, the thyroid, the parathyroids, the gonads, the adrenals. He said these glands in particular have to function as a well-tuned, a finely tuned orchestra, because they have to all talk to one another. They're all interdependent. And I mean, I hear the saddest stories, the horror stories. People get their thyroid taken out, and, oh, don't worry, we got this drug, it'll replace the thyroid. Baloney! It doesn't replace the thyroid. It keeps some of what the thyroid was doing, but it's not the same any longer, because all the organs are part and parcel of this thing we call our human body, this miraculous piece of equipment. Look, here is my dad in 1914, 15, 16, 20, thinking about these things. Holy moly! And thinking in terms of how he can put something together that will help his buddies that he used to climb mountains with, that would have helped him to not have his shortage of wind ever again, and to help other people. And so he did it, and finally in 1943, he decided to make it commercially available. And I know before he started making it in our house, he had rented a place somewhere in Lower Town, Quebec, where he had a little facility where he started making small batches, because before he started the whole company operation, he started making it and getting it out to people and selling it here and selling it there. And he was still giving a lot of it away, testing it, making sure. But he knew he had that formula the way it was supposed to be. His dream, whatever it was, whatever happened that night, it happened, and he got his mind set on how to put this together for the final time, and for the time it is, and it still is. And as the other company unfolded in 1984, he still thought that this is the product I am manufacturing. And I wasn't. As I lacked things, I put something else in, or I put less in, or I took another herb, because for me it didn't matter. I was healthy. I was doing it for people and friends of mine who were healthy. I just wanted people to have more energy and keep that blood clean. They didn't know what was going on in their body, that it was cleaning their blood, but they felt good. They had more energy. They could do more sports. And they started they started staying younger looking longer than the rest of our friends. And there was probably about 10 girls that I had convinced that they should drink this. And over the next few years, I started in the 60s, and over the next few years, 70s, these girls did not age as quickly as the ones that laughed at me. I kid you not. And I can tell you that is a fact because today, pictures don't lie. Skin tone, skin quality doesn't lie. And if you drink this, as my dad figured out, and as he started to manage to convince people, and as they started to see that it was true, people started feeling and looking younger. And the reason is simply that the body is not aging as quickly. It's not that you're getting younger. You're getting older, but it's not going as quickly. So you don't age as quickly. And if you are a little more aged looking, but you're still young, your body can bring itself back to that place. How do I know that? We have tens of thousands of people that have lived through that. We have tons of people. Wait till we bring on some of the people who had lost weight. Imagine losing 100 pounds in 8 months and not even having any hanging skin. That is not because the preparation, the Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic, is a weight product, a diet product. It is not. It is because it rebalances the system in its entirety, including your metabolic system. And when the metabolism is balanced, you don't get overweight, and you don't get underweight. And if you're underweight, you'll start putting on some pounds. And if you're overweight, you'll start taking off some pounds, because that is what a healthy body does. And you will see people that are neither underweight or overweight and can maintain a good weight without dieting and without killing themselves at the gym. I mean, sure, do a little bit of all of that, but on an ongoing basis, it's because their body is in much better balance than the people that have the either weight or the loss of weight problem. And I've known people who are way underweight, and once the metabolism starts to balance out, they feel better, they look better, they start gaining weight. And they don't gain too much weight. It's balanced. It's just the same as everything else in your body. When you get that balance, which is what the tonic does, everything functions better. Like it used to 10, 20, 30 years ago, when none of us ever had to worry about anything because we didn't get sick, we didn't have a problem, we had energy, we could do everything, eat anything, drink anything, and the body still would bring us back to semblance of life the next day. And all of a sudden, it doesn't do it as quickly, and it takes longer. That's because the body starts to break down, and little parts and pieces aren't doing it what they used to do anymore. And my father knew all that. So here he was in 1943. Our playroom was now his manufacturing facility. Folks, I'm going to leave it there because this story has a lot more to tell you. And I have a lot to tell you about his days out west, about his days during the war, about how he managed to continue and bring us to this. And then I have the story to tell you in 1984 when we started that other company with that other product, which, oh my good Lord, tune in next week. We're going to be here, and we're going to have somebody with another incredible success story of their own to relate to you. We will give you a rest on the history, and we are bringing an incredible guest who has alcoholism, somebody who's addicted to alcohol, who started drinking the tonic. Wait till you hear this really wonderful, sad, teary story. Come back next week, and we will have that front and center, and we will continue the history the following week after, okay? So thanks very much once again for being here, and don't forget, take an ounce and feel the bounce. Bye for now.